All right, we can get started. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, from wherever you have logged in. I'm Shubhendu, and I represent Gallop Solutions. I welcome you to this webinar on Selenium 3.0. At Gallop Solutions, I would just like to give you a brief overview of who we are. We are North America's largest independent software testing services company. We have offices in Philadelphia and California, and we are the 100% subsidiary of Signity Technologies, which is the second largest software testing services company with over 2,000 plus consultants across global locations and more than 600 plus in North America. We do a lot of these webinars. We do a lot of thought leadership sessions. We write a lot of white papers. So this webinar is one of a series of webinars which we host almost on a month or a bi-monthly basis. And so let me not take a lot of time, and let me introduce you to the speaker of the day. We have Soujanya. She is the senior architect at Gallop. She has over 14 years of experience in quality assurance engineering, and she's an expert with diverse automation solutions such as Silk Test, UTP, and then she using Java. And she actually is leading the automation test practice at Gallop. Her command over build tools like Gulp or Grunt or Gradle, and many of these tools to build and control execution of automation is really great. And she agreed to do this session on Selenium 3.0 when we had a brief discussion earlier last month. So before she goes on and discusses about the agenda and takes you through the rest of the presentation, I'd like to draw your attention towards the questions. On the right-hand side of your screen, you see a panel on which you would see a thing called as questions, so wherein you can type in your questions, whatever you have during the course of the webinar. At the end of the webinar, we would have a Q&A session, so please feel free to do that. I think I'm all set from my side. Soujanya, all yours. Please take it over.
Thank you, Shubhendu. Hello, everyone. Thank you for making your time for this webinar. And as Shubhendu mentioned, please write your questions below and we will address them at the end of the session. And so let me move on to the agenda. So before we understand what's new in Selenium 3.0, let's try to understand the world of test automation and then how Selenium continued its space in the market by influencing open source automation, and how Selenium helped in accelerating the testing in like continuous integration and continuous delivery pipelines. And we would also like to show a demo of our internal framework, which is upgraded to 3.0. And then we would also like to showcase a demo of Jenkins at the end of this session. So let me move on to the next slide very quickly. So as I mentioned, we'll discuss about the world of test automation and the role of Selenium. So if we compare a decade ago where the world was moving from waterfall model to agile, so everyone started showing interest towards a quick early feedback on, especially on the application, the development. And so then the testing is shifted to part of the development. So previously that was actually a separate cycle. We used to have testing after the development is finished, and by the time the feedback is very late, so by the time we reach to the release. So now the testing shifted part of the development, and then that is where the automation also started playing key role in getting early feedback, and especially in identifying regression bugs. So because we know like automation is like a one-time job. Once we write the script, and we can keep executing any number of times, and that definitely remembers what was expected in the application. So especially if you look at the DevOps and continuous delivery cycle, and if we observe currently, like almost every step in the continuous delivery cycle is automated, not only just the testing or functional tests. So almost every step is automated. So that way, with just a single press, it just performs a code check-in and then deploys the build and then starts executing the scripts. And then Also, it can also even deploy the production. So automate the production deployment. So in that situation, definitely automation, functional tests also play key role. Along with unit and API tests in this cycle, so we also started integrating functional tests so that we can thoroughly test the application and it can guarantee that the moment it goes through these phases and the functional tests are passed, so we can confidently deploy the build to the production. So during this time, now for an easy integration with all these phases, and for the reusability, so the preference is changing to choose like automation technology close to the development technology. So for example, if the application development is happening in Java or C#, so definitely we started preferring a tool which is supported in the similar programming language so that it can be easily integrated, especially implementing CI/CD, or even developers can start executing the test, kick off the test from their build tools. And so this is one aspect of where again Selenium has become first choice because it supports multiple programming languages. And the other aspect of testing is to cover multiple browsers and platforms. So because now the whole phase is planning to be automated, and we would also like to cover different browsers and platforms if possible within that phase. So again, Selenium best fits for this requirement too, because it supports multiple browsers and platforms. And so one more point is like when it comes to the regression, definitely we would like to cover as many as test cases as possible. So if possible, we would like to actually cover the full regression as part of CI/CD. So in this case, definitely if we try to execute sequentially, it consumes a lot of time. So we have to implement a parallel distributed execution to reduce the execution time and to get a quick feedback. Especially when it comes to smoke test, the ideal scenario is it should not take less than 15 minutes so that the developer can test or run the scripts as many times as possible whenever they are having a small fixes. And when it comes to the again CI/CD life cycle, again the testing should not take again less than 30 minutes. So in this case, again, the Selenium becomes the first choice because Selenium supports parallel distributed execution in various ways. We can actually implement the parallel execution using test frameworks like TestNG, JUnit, or the build tools like Ant, Maven, or Gradle. And along with Selenium also has a grid. It has its own internal tool called grid, which will load balance or have the multiple distributed systems. So these are some of the aspects of Selenium, how it is because of its open architecture and because it can integrate well with any development tools, and because of its support on multiple browsers, platforms, and different programming languages. So definitely it is becoming the first choice for everybody. And Selenium is not only used for automating in automation. So this also the API, Selenium API is used as backbone for many other automation tools, especially when we take mobile automation like Appium or iOS driver, Android driver, or in the recent web technologies like in AngularJS, Protractor, or the Node.js, Network.js. So in many of these drivers are using Selenium as a backbone. So in this case, so definitely, this is the role of Selenium. So let's move on to the next slide with these details. So I would like to start with an introduction with Selenium 1.0, how Selenium started. Let's recap some of the technical details so that this will help us to understand what are the changes in 3.0. So let's see the recap. And so we already know Selenium 1.0 was introduced in 2004 by Jason Huggins, and he was working at ThoughtWorks at that time. And JavaScript approach is followed for interacting with browsers and using a JavaScript sandbox. And Selenium 1.0 came with an IDE, which is a Firefox plugin. And this IDE actually itself is a framework. So it has a recording and playback tool, and it also has option to execute test cases or can create test suites. And itself has some of the some little programming logics. So, and apart from IDE, there is also a Selenium RC remote control where it supports execution on local or remote machines with different language bindings, because Selenium IDE scripts are written in a HTML table format. They are just plain text files, whereas RC supports different programming languages like Java, C#, and Python. So as mentioned here, so and Ruby. So now with Selenium RC, the way Selenium RC works is it has client libraries in different languages, as I mentioned, and from client libraries we will send commands to the Selenium remote server, and the RC receives the commands and it sends the commands to the browser. So basically it performs a HTTP injection, the Java proxy injection of JavaScript. So that way it works, it interacts with the browser. The browser is again launched by Selenium RC. And in Selenium RC itself, because of its nature, it was developed in Java, so it was able to support different operating systems. And because the logic is actually interacting with the DOM of the browser, because of that, it is able to actually support any browser with a similar approach. And RC is developed in different programming languages. The client libraries are available in different programming languages. Yeah. So with this information, let's move on to the next slide, where we see some details about Selenium 2.0. So Selenium 2.0 was introduced in August 2009. But before we get more details into 2.0, let's discuss a few details about the WebDriver. In early 2007, Simon Stewart at ThoughtWorks had been working on a web testing tool called WebDriver. And so unlike Selenium RC, so the WebDriver is not relying on JavaScript, but instead it was actually using the browser drivers to interact with the application. So it actually interacts natively to the application instead of injecting or instead of communicating with the DOM. And he created a wrapper on top of HTML unit testing tool, so which was widely used at that time. And so he used a adapter pattern, and during that time the WebDriver was supported only in Java. So these are some of the details of WebDriver during its first initial stages. And then later on, Simon and Jason, when these guys joined Google, and in one of the Google test automation conferences, when they have presented these two, so definitely it was found that these two were addressing the same challenge of automation solution. They're providing automation solution, and both work in a similar way, but a little bit of architecture differences. Like the way it interacts with browser, definitely RC is different from WebDriver, and Selenium RC supports multiple programming languages, and whereas WebDriver was available only in Java at that time. So, and after a couple of interactions, so and at that time Web 2.0 was released, and so there was a web W3C standard which was talking about same origin policy. So let's discuss a little bit about same origin policy, especially when a third party is trying to access elements from domain, so from the application. So it is not recommended to give access to any other external domains. So especially if we see Selenium RC communication, so Selenium RC server runs locally, and when the local server injects proxies into the application domain, so the application domain is different from where Selenium RC is interacting. So this is actually a kind of not as per the WebDriver standard, which is called same origin policy. So because of this, and whereas WebDriver on the other hand is handling the same thing differently. So it is directly interacting with the browser driver. So where the browser driver implementations are provided on top of WebDriver. So this way it is fully supporting the same origin policy, and it is effectively addressing. So because of that, in 2009, the WebDriver is merged with Selenium, and then the WebDriver is modified to support different programming languages. So the WebDriver also now started available in different client language bindings. And so because by that time, many people have already started using Selenium RC, and there are a number of scripts already automated using RC. So there was a solution provided as WebDriver backed Selenium. So where whoever was already using RC scripts, they can actually use this interface, the WebDriver backed Selenium class, to slowly migrate. So it's like not migration of the full commands, but just migration of initialization of browser, so that the Selenium core's logic will be changed to WebDriver. And so this is a little bit recap about 1.0 and 2.0. Yeah. So let's move on to the next slide and see what has changed in 3.0. Okay, so as I explained, the Selenium RC libraries were not compliant with same origin policy, and as well as definitely with this JavaScript approach, it is getting difficult to test web and mobile applications. And so by that time, by the time 2.0, many organizations already started migrating to WebDriver. So definitely this is the right time to start for the Selenium 1.0 libraries, or we call Selenium RC libraries, to drop, and we can, because people are already switching to WebDriver. So one of the major changes in 3.0 is to retire Selenium RC completely. And what exactly this change means is, from Selenium WebDriver API, the legacy RC libraries are separated, and these RC libraries are now fully backed by WebDriver. So as of 2.0, the RC was still available as it is with the same architecture, and there was a separate WebDriver backed Selenium available, and there is a WebDriver API available. But from 3.0, legacy RC, Selenium RC libraries are fully separated as legacy RC, and this legacy RC is now will be using the WebDriver backed approach. So that way the RC approach is totally dropped from this library. And Selenium Java library contains only the clean version of WebDriver, so it's not going to contain any other browser drivers or any other legacy RC drivers. And there is a Selenium 3 server. So what does this mean is, the Selenium 3 server is going to contain a fully WebDriver approach, and but the hub and nodes architecture will remain same, and it still works the same way, and we can continue to use Selenium Grid the same way as we were using. Okay. Okay. So now we'll see how this impacts some of the existing automation scripts, or whoever are planning to migrate to 3.0. So what does this change mean? So whoever were already using WebDriver, this change does not impact much because they can continue to use WebDriver, but definitely it is recommended to move to Selenium 3.0 because it has a clean version of Selenium Java, and it supports Selenium 3.0 works with only Java 1.8 or higher. So let's talk about this change a little later, and so let's continue discussing on the impact of existing scripts. So whoever are already using WebDriver, there is absolutely no change, and they can continue to use. They can just immediately switch to 3.0 and continue executing their scripts, unless they are using any of the legacy RC references. So for example, from 2.0 library, if we were referring to any of the legacy RC libraries, even though we were using WebDriver, so some of those references we need to modify according to the current WebDriver library. And so, and coming to the scripts who are already using, who are using still Selenium RC, the older way of Selenium scripts, and I'm sure there might be very rare people because most of them already migrated to WebDriver backed or WebDriver. But in case if somebody is using still RC libraries, then it's time to move on to 3.0 and start migrating them to WebDriver. And but even though they switch to 3.0 now, and they can do a slow migration because we have enough time, and a legacy RC library is still provided, so they can switch to legacy RC library first, and then by 4.0 they can completely migrate to WebDriver. So that way there is an option in this 3.0 for a slow migration, and there is still plenty of time given to switch to WebDriver. So coming back to the limitation, it supports only Java 1.8 or higher. So by considering different changes, even the Firefox is migrated to its latest version, and from Selenium 2.0 we have observed the Firefox browser latest version was not really working because the Firefox driver in the Selenium 2.0 library was not up to date by that time. And so because there are so many upgrades, so and Selenium 3.0 WebDriver libraries are also upgraded to support Java 1.8 or higher. But unfortunately, this means it is no more working with the Java 1.8 lesser version. So it means whenever we migrate to Selenium 3.0 and migrate to 1.8, make sure if we are, as part of automation framework, we use different utilities or different libraries, which may be depending on some of the older version of Java. So it's time to upgrade all of them and make sure all of the supporting libraries also works fine with 1.8. So this is one impact because of this limitation. This is one impact it may have when switching to 3.0. And so there are other changes to discuss about. We have, as I mentioned, there is a support for latest Firefox browser. So unlike before, previously Firefox driver is part of WebDriver, and where we don't need to exclusively initialize, and we can directly launch the Firefox browser. But whereas for Google Chrome and IE driver or Edge browser, we know that we were using their driver EFC, and then which is actually maintained by their own vendors. So the same way now Firefox driver is going to be maintained by Mozilla, and they have released a driver called GeckoDriver.exe. So we need to start referring to GeckoDriver.exe whenever launching Firefox in the system properties of Selenium. So this is one change to remember if we are planning to move to execution with Firefox latest version. Okay, so a few more other changes is W3C specification, and so to talk about W3 specification, this one helps actually. These will help to define some standards for the WebDriver API, because as I mentioned earlier, like Selenium WebDriver is not only used just in automation tests. It's used in different tools, other mobile and web automation tools as a backbone, and even the browser vendors are developing, updating their browser drivers according to the WebDriver API. So it definitely helps to have a standards around the WebDriver API, and so that everybody follows the same standard. So, and this also, the W3C not only helps to define standards. Now we are going to have a team of people like who will focusedly work on Selenium open source contributions, and every open source contribution is now validated against to these standards. And so in 3.0, the W3 specification is still in the draft state. But from 4.0 or 5.0 by 5.0. So once this the full version of W3 standards is released, and if any contribution which is not compliant to this standard is going to be dropped from WebDriver API. So this is another change in 3.0. Okay. So with this, let's move on to the next slide, and let's note down the key points from the Selenium 3.0. So as I mentioned, Selenium 3.0 is just showing us a roadmap towards 4.0 and 5.0, and there are no changes when it comes to the WebDriver, but apart from the Java 1.8 version. So right now we have to ensure, if we are moving to 3.0, we have to ensure the Java version is 1.8 or higher, and we need to make sure of updating our library, supporting libraries accordingly to support 1.8. and legacy RC libraries needs to be included in case if you are migrating from Selenium RC to Selenium WebDriver. So you have to use legacy RC as a separate library. Now it's a separate library, it's not part of the WebDriver library. So we have to include this for a few more days until the complete migration of WebDriver is done for the automation scripts. And again, as I mentioned, there are no changes on the Selenium 3 server, and Selenium Java library going to contain only the WebDriver libraries, and no changes as long as you are not referring to any of the legacy RC references. So, yeah. Okay, so with this key points, let's again recap the Selenium roadmap and see how it changed from 1.0 to 2.0 and 3.0. So in 1.0, as we have seen, there was only Selenium core implementation, and the core was working using the JavaScript approach. And we also have an RC server which will communicate between the client libraries and the browser through a JavaScript injection model. So, and in 2.0, we still have Selenium core and the RC server, and along with a WebDriver. So WebDriver follows a different approach where it interacts with the browser directly using the browser drivers, and whereas core injects the JavaScript into the browser. So in 2.0, it came up with two of these approaches available, and in between it also provided a migration option using the Selenium backed WebDriver. Okay, now coming to the 3.0, so we have decided to retire core, and core is also fully backed by WebDriver. As I mentioned, there are various reasons, like because of the single origin policy in Web 2.0, so Selenium core architecture no more working well in the mobile and web automations, and WebDriver is still fulfilling the single origin policy, and it continues to work well with different automation tools, and it is also providing backbone support for different automation tools like Appium, iWebDriver, and like Protractor. So in 3.0, the WebDriver will take over the complete, Selenium Java API is going to contain only WebDriver, the clean version. And apart from that, we also started, so the initial draft of W3C standard started in 2012, but it's still continuing. So we are hopefully expecting it to be completed in 4.0. So the W3C standards are initiated for WebDriver, and it's in the draft state. And by 4.0, so we are expecting even the legacy RC, whatever libraries are separated in 3.0, so the legacy RC libraries may be fully dropped. So hence, it is definitely recommended to move to WebDriver, fully migrate to WebDriver, so that we will be ready for 4.0 as well. And in 4.0, the WebDriver will continue as it is, and we may expect some changes by that time. So we are not sure yet. And the W3C, we are expecting the W3C standards will be finalized by that time, and from there onwards, if any open source contributors or if any other tool vendors contributing to WebDriver, and if it is not compliant to the standard, so that those will be dropped from the WebDriver API. Okay. Yeah. So let's move on to the next slide. So I would like to talk a little bit about Gallop's experience with Selenium. So we have a Center of Excellence team at Gallop, and till now we worked with like about 120 clients, and with this experience, and because the Selenium framework is implemented for various clients, and different utilities are developed according to the client requirements, and also the automation framework development covers different customizations or supports multiple browser platforms. So with this experience of Gallop, and it also provides migration to Selenium analysis support if whoever are planning to migrate from commercial automation tools or any other automation tools to Selenium. So we provide an analysis support with a tool called migration to Selenium. So with all this experience, Gallop has come up with a unified automation, Selenium automation framework, where this framework is like we have a standard framework which will fit into any project needs and can be easily customizable, depends on the project needs. And the framework is available in different language bindings. So if you want in C# or Ruby or any language that client prefers. And whenever we make any new change, we continue to maintain, update our framework with consistently across all languages with these changes. So now we are also now ready with Selenium 3.0 change, so very quickly. So with this change, I would like to move on to the next slide and showcase, explain about the Gallop test automation framework. So as I mentioned, this is a unified framework and which is a generic across projects or across languages, and it supports multiple browsers and even mobile browsers or all mobile platforms. And we have web accelerators which are completely written by Gallop. We call it Gallop accelerators because whatever action library actions we have in Selenium, we wrapped it with Gallop's reporting or exception handling, and by addressing different access issues with the components. So we have provided solutions. So we have Gallop accelerators and different drivers, and we can write automation scripts in different languages. And we follow the page object model, and it supports test input in different medium, like we can use JSON or Excel or database. And we also have reporting. We can use any test. It can fit very well with any test framework like TestNG, JUnit, or Jasmine. And we use dependency management like Maven or Gradle. So that even right now for Selenium 3.0, we already got the Maven dependency library, and that's where it was easy for us to migrate to Selenium 3.0 with the Maven dependencies. And the framework can fit well with the continuous integration server. So when setting up the CI, on Jenkins, when setting up the jobs, Jenkins, or it can be any other tool. So we have different build scripts. So we're using these build scripts or different config files. We just have to send those parameters to the CI server so that it just invokes the execution, and it gives the reporting. So we have customized reporting. Right now we recently moved to extend reports, which is the latest model. And we also have integration with test management tools like ALM, or it can be Jira or any test management tool. So that whether the execution happens from CI server or from local, we can post the results to the test execution suite from the test management tool. So this is a little bit about our Gallop Unified Test Automation Framework. And let's move on and see a demo of a framework where I just want to quickly spend a few minutes showcase the 3.0 changes. It's a very short demo. So I hope everyone can see our screen. And this is Gallop's Unified Test Automation Framework. As I mentioned, we used page object model, so where we maintain pages and then automation scripts separated from pages, so that if there are any changes in the application at any point of time, it's very easy to recognize in which page the change happened, and we just go there and change the implementation, so that all the automation scripts are automatically updated with that change. And the object repository is maintained separately. And we also have different, like I mentioned, we have an accelerator, and we have action library and test engine. So the test engine has implementations for various integrations like SaaS Labs or any cloud integration or Jenkins integration. So we have our tools written for all of those. And action library talks about the Selenium browser initializations as well as different commands initialization. So as I mentioned, we are already ready to move on to the latest Firefox browser, and we have initialized a Gecko driver here. This is one of the 3.0 changes. And so we have utilities. As I mentioned, we have utilities where we have Jira integration or QC integration, and of course other custom utilities, logger or listeners, and different readers, XML parser or CSV. So we can read data from different sources. And right now we are using Maven dependencies. So as I told, the Java is upgraded to 1.8, and we have Selenium 3.0 libraries downloaded using Maven. So we see here all the different browser drivers are separated, and Selenium Java has clean WebDriver version. And we haven't downloaded legacy RC because we are not using any of the legacy RC at this moment. And we use TestNG for execution. So we have this is the TestNG XML, and the reports are generated can be local or Jenkins. So depends on that reporting timestamp will appear. So we can execute locally as well as Jenkins. So I have a quick video of Jenkins execution, so that I just want to mention a few points about how Selenium can be integrated easily with continuous integration pipelines using these parameters. So we have created a Jenkins job. So this generally in the continuous integration pipeline, the pipeline starts with committing the code, and the build and deployment of the build happens, and from there, from the deployment, we can actually use some of these parameters. So these parameters will go as input to the Selenium framework. So these parameters can be sent from a deployment job as well. So when a deployment job chooses which browser want to execute or which application, sometimes they might have server, the URL details. So we can also expose all of them as parameters. And so the parameters will can be set here. And when we say build, it just triggers the Maven build and performs the execution of the script. So right now we see we just triggered a build, and it is doing the execution. So it's downloading the Maven dependencies and performs the execution. So this way, because Selenium, because of its open source nature, or because it can easily integrate with any build tool or any test management tool, it's easy for us to implement Selenium automation test, integrate them into the continuous integration pipeline, or even developer can easily trigger. So it is just a simple build script, and he can just easily trigger automation scripts from his local machine to quickly validate his change. Yeah. So right now we see the browser open, and it's just executing a test. Okay. So as I mentioned, in Selenium 3.0, so if we are already using WebDriver, it's very easy to migrate. We just have to switch to Java 1.8, and we just have to start downloading the 3.0 libraries. And unless even when we were migrating, we have observed we were using some of the references from RC API. So there were some useful things actually. So but we were able to easily migrate them to 3.0. And I would also like to mention another point where, as I mentioned, Selenium supports multiple languages like Java, C#, and Ruby as a primary languages of their support. But there are some other third-party language extensions, like there are multiple JavaScript extensions available, so we can write Selenium scripts in JavaScript as well. And we also have Python, and so we also have Perl extensions which are developed by third-party. And right now, all the mobile extensions. So even though we migrated to Selenium 3.0, so some of these third-party extensions, so they have to decide when to migrate to 3.0. And so far, whoever are using Appium, so there is no change, so no configuration changes required to migrate. So if you see here, right now it has completed script execution, and we see whatever we see is the extent report. So it has we can see the detailed step results as well as we can see the suite result. Okay. So this is the Selenium framework demo, and so thank you so much for listening to the webinar, and now we are open for questions. So let's take a few minutes so that I will read on to the questions and I'll start answering them.
Thank you so much, Soujanya, for a very informative webinar. We did have a lot of interesting questions. Some of them I have taken liberty to answer, and there are a couple of other questions. If you can take a look at the questions panel and read out the questions for all of the audience and then answer the questions, I think that will be great. Okay, we have multiple questions. Let me read them out for you. One of it, Soujanya, is, can this framework, I think this was a question which came up during Gallup's Unified Test Automation Framework. So can this framework be integrated with Microsoft TFS? Can you please answer this question?
Yes, so as I mentioned, we do support integration with different continuous integration servers. So as far as I know, TFS also is used as test management tool as well as a continuous integration server. So we do have integration with TFS with some of the clients.
Okay. There is another question which just came up. So is Selenium Beta 3.02, does that support Firefox with Gecko driver? Do you have any, yeah, please.
Yes, as I mentioned, from Firefox 45 plus browser onwards, we have to start using Gecko driver EFC. So we just have to download this from the official site, Gecko driver EFC, and yes, it works with Firefox 48 as well.
Okay, and there is another question. Can Selenium be used for automating IBM BPM workflow testing?
Okay, actually, I'm not sure about the BPM workflow, but definitely we will find out this information and we will email the answer.
Definitely. All right, and we have another question. Do you have expertise to automate Selenium for ERP solutions like Workday?
Yes, I think I do remember we did address some of these ERP solutions like Workday, and because of Selenium's open architecture nature, Selenium along with some other tools, we can easily achieve automating this. But we can see actually depends on the application challenges, especially at Gallop, we do some analysis and we do some research and come up with a customized solution. So I'm sure it should be possible.
And does this support Silverlight application automation as well?
Yeah, actually I did worked on Silverlight application automation. So Selenium was having support for Silverlight. Not sure if we are still using it, but there is an API available for Selenium Silverlight automation, and yeah, it does support.
There is another question which says, we are unable to execute the test for standalone applications directly using WebDriver. So can we execute the standalone application test using Selenium 3.0?
No, as mentioned, like Selenium always supports only web applications automation. So even in the official side, many people ask the question like they want whether Selenium starts supporting standalone or desktop applications from 3.0. But unfortunately, no. So it continues to support only web applications automation.
Thank you. We have another question, and the question is, we have Dev Express rich text editor integrated with our application, which is Silverlight controlled. How can we achieve automating any suggestions? Any suggestions? That's the question.
Okay, so as I mentioned, there is a Silverlight API available, but apart from that, I think we can integrate because Selenium allows execution with anything. So we can use some other tools integrated with Selenium, and we can experiment on this. So because because this one is too technical, so I don't want to go deeply into the implementation part, but actually, yeah, I'm sure it should be possible with integrating with other tools with Selenium. And I would like to read another question related to the ALM integration with the C# binding as well. So yes, we have ALM integration available even with C#, Java, and even VB script. So it is possible, ALM integration.
Great. There is another question. Will there be any updates to the IDE?
Okay, so as I mentioned, yeah, there was an update. So in Selenium IDE, we used to have something called Selenium core runner. There are people who are executing IDE scripts through the core runner. So we are they are continuing to provide that jar file, the core runner jar file, but again, as I mentioned, it is backed by WebDriver. So we continue to have support for IDE, as well as we continue to have support for the core runner. So with the WebDriver backed Selenium.
Thank you, Soujanya. We have another question called, how about Edge browser support?
We already have Edge browser support in Selenium, as far as I know, and it continues to have the same support. And as I mentioned, the browser vendors own the driver maintenance, so which will have some advantages, like if browser vendors own it, so they know what kind of changes they are doing in the browsers, and they will provide such interacting. They will provide support interacting with their components easily in the browser driver. And whereas and they will update Selenium WebDriver accordingly. So Edge driver support was always there, and it will continue to be there.
Great. There is an interesting question. I see Selenium is having trouble in handling JavaScript built UI, which results in a huge wait time incorporation. Do you think any solution is available in Selenium 3.0?
So in WebDriver also we do have some solutions for handling wait times or dynamic wait times. In 3.0, absolutely there are no changes when it comes to the API functionality. So we continue to use the similar way like how we are doing in 2.0. So unfortunately, there is no new solution available for this problem. But yeah, we continue to use the similar way.
Okay. And is there any dependency to integrate different CI server with Selenium 3.0?
Sorry, can you come again?
Sure. So the question is there any dependency to integrate a different CI server with Selenium 3.0 or no?
So basically, CI server is nothing to do with the Selenium. So, for example, we have Jenkins server, and we just use on Jenkins we run the job actually. So we call Selenium test through a build script. So that way, as long as this build script can be executed from any CI server, so it supports. So that way, Selenium can fit onto any tool as long as the server is able to execute the build script.
Great.
I hope I understand.
I think if there are, for all the attendees, if there are questions which you feel that you need more information because of limited time which we have on this call, we may or may not be able to answer all of them in accurate details. But if you send out an email to marketing@gallop.net, it's marketing@gallop.net. If you send across an email to this email ID, we will be able to get you the answers to all of your questions. Before we wind up, I'll just take 2 more minutes to read out if there are any further questions, and then we can wind up for the day.
I have one interesting question here. So they would like to know if there are any issues with Selenium 3.0 as of today. There is one known bug where because they have deprecated the driver.close, and we started seeing a exception in driver.quit. So especially in 3.0, when you are using driver.quit command, it might start throwing you illegal monitor state exception. So to avoid that, you can actually wrap that around a try-catch block and accept that as an exception for now until they fix it in maybe 4.0. So that is one known exception. And apart from that, there shouldn't be any issues as long as I mentioned, as long as you migrate safely with Java 1.8 based on your supporting libraries, not related to Selenium. So that way we are good. There are no new issues with Selenium 3.0.
So, Soujanya, I'm not sure if you have taken a look at this. What all do we need to change to execute old scripts after migrating to Selenium 3.0?
Okay, so if you mean by the Selenium RC scripts, definitely in the RC script you should start using the WebDriver backed Selenium, because now I think you shouldn't really make any change, but even though you define with the older way, it actually starts communicating with using the WebDriver. So when it is communicating with WebDriver, there may be some impacts you might see while executing commands. So you might have to change the components identifications accordingly, because now it is not using the JavaScript approach, it's going to use the WebDriver approach. So if you ask me, like, nothing to change except you point to the legacy RC library and just execute and see if the scripts show any object identification issues while executing with WebDriver. And if you are talking about the WebDriver 2.0, absolutely no change. So we can simply migrate to 3.0 Selenium Java API. In case if you are referring to legacy libraries as well in WebDriver scripts, I mean, while doing some implementation. So in that case, you need a legacy RC also to be included.
Great. And does Selenium 3.0 and the projected 4.0 support mobile?
As I mentioned, mobile drivers wise, the iOS driver, Appium driver, and we have Android driver as well. So there are third-party libraries right now already using Selenium as a backbone. So when it comes to 3.0, so these drivers have to start upgrading to 3.0. But for now, we don't see any configuration change related to them, because 3.0 contains the same WebDriver as before. So, and 4.0, we are not sure yet whether we are expecting any major change in the mobile, but for now it remains same.
Thank you, Soujanya. I think we are coming towards the close of this webinar. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in for this webinar. We hope that it was informative. And if, as I mentioned, if there are any further questions, please do feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be more than glad to help you out on all of your queries. Thank you, Soujanya, for this informative session once again, and wish everyone a very great day.
Yeah, thank you, Shubhendu, and thank you so much, everyone. And it definitely helps to listen different questions or different, from different engineers actually how the Selenium is used, and it's really very good response. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.